described a lot of things too that were really important. You know, you don't want to sit around. You want to get stuff going. You want to get it done. So that's really important. Okay, how about our relationship builders? You all and some of you, how about relationship building? What did you guys talk about?
Oh, we were in relationships. We kind of talked about our, not just relationships, but sort of where our strengths were in sort of several of the categories, and we just talked about different situations in terms of building team, how we work with teams, how we built teams, what we've learned about how those relationships have worked.
Yeah. And do you all really like connecting with people? Finding that linkage with people? Is that important to you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. So I mentioned it in my professional experience. I found too that if you don't have a mix of these types, things can go pretty and sometimes get really off base with them. So having people with different strengths and mixing together can be really beneficial. So.
Absolutely. And we tend to gravitate towards hiring people just like us. And that's not always the best.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a balance of people that can do different kinds of functions within your team. So these are really important. Yes?
So could you speak a little bit to like what kinds of pairings or, you know, if you're gonna have like one, I don't know how to really describe that. Like which leadership corners are best with other corners if you're missing, if you had to pick one?
Yeah, that's a great point. Typically, people will straddle two of these, so you just don't usually live in one domain, you usually have two. There are some folks, though, I work with some organizations where you will see members of their team that have all 5 of their particular talents in relationship building, but that's where they really are living. But if you are, if you have a relatively small team, and you know, you just need to be first and foremost clear about what you bring to the table as the person in charge. So where do you live? If it's in executing, is there another area that really resonates with you? And be really clear about that. And then really seek out, and I'll show you some questions that I think give you some insight to what kind of people that you need. If you feel like my best is not in influencing or my best is not in relationship building, then what kind of people do you need to hire? So to really be clear on first what you are and where are the areas that you fit really well in. And then next, well, what does that mean for the people I partner with? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how about, I think we had one influencer in the group, and you were the influencer. Can you tell us a little bit about the kinds of things you like doing in the world of influencing? What are things that you enjoy?
In terms of hobbies or in terms of work?
Either one.
I guess I've noticed, I mean, I'm always participating. I really like discussions, and I didn't realize, but I tend to really speak up and care about what I think, and I don't get scared of arguing. I like conflict. It doesn't bother me if somebody wants to debate. I'm a social person, so I enjoy anything that is interactive. Yeah.
And so if you are in a situation where you feel like you want to contribute but you're not sure you should, what do you tend to do? Do you jump in?
Usually, yeah.
And typically people with influence, that's their natural place, is they almost feel uncomfortable if they don't contribute. Is that accurate for you?
Yeah, I have to contribute even if I don't know anything about what I'm talking about.
You are a true influence.
The exact opposite.
Okay, how about our strategic thinkers? I knew you were one. What was your conversation like?
Yeah, I feel like we all had in common, or something we all had in common was we can kind of see where we need to go, and we all enjoy kind of finding the path to get there.
Yeah. And how important is data to you all, the strategic thinkers? Do you like data?
Me personally, not.
Not so much.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. What do you use when you're making decisions in your business?
I feel like more gut.
More gut.
Yeah.
So it's intuitive. Absolutely. How about some of the rest of you? Is kind of data or kind of information that's important to you? What do you think?
The whole decision-making part for strategic thinking didn't really fit with me because I'm horrible at making decisions. So I think for me, the more thing that resonated with me was being able to like look at the situation and make some options available,
Yeah.
and then let other people make the final decision.
And that's a great point. People that are strategic thinkers, if you take a strength finder assessment and test into strategic, you're a person that really can sift through information and find the path you want to go, and you always have lots of options.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's important for you, and that's a great takeaway, that it's really great to have a partner or a complementary person within your organization who, when you have those options, you can process it with them.
We actually do that pretty well.
Good.
There are times where we'll come up with a bunch of options and Sandy will just be like, you need to make the decision, and then I do.
Here they
Which
are.
must be the executing part of me.
Absolutely, that's a
Yeah.
great takeaway. And know this about, when you're leading an organization, we were having a discussion about what's the best one to have. It's not about there's a best one to have, it's about understanding who you are and what you need around you.
Mm-hmm.
Because absolutely, people can ascend to great levels of success with any of these, and that's all the research out of Gallup will tell you excellence can be achieved with any one of these areas. But you need to understand what you bring to the table and what you're lacking, and have those folks around you. So it's not that one's better than the other. You can't say, well, I have to be influencing to be, the head of a company. That's not true at all. You really have to understand where you come from. Okay, some closing thoughts. Any final questions? Make sense for you? Okay, here's some things to be thinking about when you're looking at your organization. You need an organized, structured individual with attention to detail. That's an individual who's in the executing domain. That's the kind of person you need. If you need an individual who can present the case for your product or service, that's a person who's really good with influencing. If you're looking for someone who can bring your team together, that's a person that has a relationship building domain. And if you need individuals who can use data and information and determine direction, that's strategic thinking. And again, you need all four of those. And it could be there's two of those areas that you're really strong in. Okay, some final thoughts. I would encourage you all to take the assessment. If you take the Strength Finders assessment, there's all kinds of tools on that assessment that you can use. You can go in and do all kinds of things. And so I would think about taking it. Pay attention to the job responsibilities that give you energy. You want to spend, again, 70% of your time on something that really gives you a lot of energy and makes you happy. And then remember, all organizations need all kinds of folks to build out that 4 domains of leadership and build your team around those domains. And then if you have questions, that's my contact information. I'm basically a consultant to campus in the area of training and organizational development. And I'm happy to, at any time, take your questions. And if you all want the PowerPoint too, I'm glad to send that to Jessica. So I think I'm turning it over to Sue.
I think you have a question.
Yeah, go right ahead.
With the Strength Finder, I didn't take it because I wasn't sure it's better. Do you take it as it was like an organization point or an individual? If I do it as an organization, does that mean everyone in my team can do it?
You can take it, what you do is when you go into that website, you take it as an individual, because if you take it as an organization, they want you to buy like 10 or more codes. So
Okay.
sign up as the individual, and that can be really confusing. That might be why some of you might have gotten, like you get stuff in 5 days or something, 2 days or 3 days. You just sign up as an individual.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, thank you so much for your time today, and good luck. You guys have amazing work to do.
Why don't we go ahead and take about 5 minutes, a little bit of a break, and then we'll come back.
I actually didn't say that for that one, but there was some that was speaking up.
Or doesn't want to take any notes, so you
I just found smart model students want to continue with
I've
that.
been doing
I love
work
that.
with,
That full hour service. I think that's so smart. I love the use of it. Going
Thank you very much. That was
Yeah,
great.
it's like the
Like,
hardest thing.
when you brought up influencer,
My
I was
favorite
like, that's just not me. That seems like an extrovert, and I'm not an extrovert unless I'm around people I know. I feel weird if I'm like, oh, that person looks really busy standing over there by themselves. I don't really need to go bother them right now.
I don't know.
The way I network is I just stand.
I wait for people to come to me.
Yeah, and then they're like, how are you? And I'm like, oh, hi, yes, I'm very nice.
Like me.
Like me, hello.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'll go up to some people, but a lot of people I just like let them.
I think I'm like talking more like the business environment because I'm not used to it. Like, I went to like a media festival and like I was fine networking there. Like I went up to people at all the panels I went to and like talked to them afterwards. But like any of the networking events in the business school, I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
People ask about things I don't know the answer to, so I'm just gonna.
I don't know. I'm
just gonna be here.
Well,
But like,
instead of going out that, I haven't
in
actually.
business, like I understand the value of it
I haven't
because I'm
got to use it.
but like the things I network best in are things where you just like
Yeah, I mean,
know
we have.
impacts and like sustainability, even medicine, those things it's just so much that like it's so easy to talk to people about them. And business is more I feel like I'm just constantly bullshitting. Like I know what I'm saying and I'm just saying it and I'm getting nothing out of it.
That's gonna
Not learning anything from it.
like so what's your like strategy? And I'm like, I have one. I just don't really know how to communicate it to you, and it's gonna sound stupid.
Yeah.
Because also like the way people talk to each other in business school is different than how they talk to each other in, especially from what I've noticed in my journalism school, my liberal arts period.
Oh,
It's just like
Yeah, no.
chill, we're all friends. And then in business school they're like, you just laugh during conversation. To you, not funny. Sorry.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. I have to say having all my classes in there is a little bit draining.
Maybe I'm thinking of different.
Because I think a lot of business people too are like mainly executing or influencers. Like they're kind of over there.
Yeah, definitely influencing.
And they expect you to be incentive too.
Yeah. Or they expect you to influence, you know.
Right.
And like if you're a very free spirit, you're like, oh, I really want to be influenced, but I'm not really going to put my ideas on you. But I mean,
Will you read my cover letter?
Just do today. Yes.
That's what I've heard from the people, like,
That's the best news.
like I
I've got to,
people keep on moving to different states, different parts of the country. They want something which they can, take with them everywhere. Cloud
what
storage,
is
cloud
that's like if you can woo someone.
Oh, like,
I know I saw that when I was reading over the answers and I was like, whoa, like super stoked about everything. Like that's not me, but I
more simple and more visually appealing what I feel like.
I just feel like in 15 million
it's actually the session was pretty helpful because it like makes you answer all the questions in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So like you have to do it like really fast. So you can't be like, I want to be more this, like I should do this.
Yeah.
So I feel like I do that a lot.
A lot of them have different qualities.
I want to be this. So I'm gonna answer like that, so my result shows me that I am like that, and now I'm gonna agree with them.
I sent my like whole family and all my friends like the 16 personalities test, which is just like all the different types of
Well, that's like our circle.
and
Because the
I
other
like
one
you could
is really
see
more of a
who answered it like correctly for themselves and who answered it as like who they want to be. And it was really interesting to see the results of my 3 best friends all got ENFP. And we're all like fairly different people. And so you can tell like which one of us is actually ENFP and like which ones are just like thinking that would be better for them. It's interesting. I think personality type is so cool.
I do too, and I think it helps you understand why you
But if you just
are how
make
you
it, or,
are.
I don't know,
Like,
we're still kind of,
how do I say
or we would just have an app for you and then develop the
And it
app.
like reminds you of what your strengths are. Because I'm the type of person who always focuses on what I can improve
What else can we do?
versus what I'm like already good at and can use.
Yeah.
And so when it tells you, okay, these are the things you're good at, so just do
You just put
it.
them, it has a
Yeah.
60 to 90 day supply of, let's say I want to work
Because I
out
have like 12 windows open.
with a group of
I officially started opening like
Party
new
kid.
windows.
No,
So
all
I
the
just
windows.
have
That's a
like
good idea. You know, I
15
always had just one window open.
Like the tabs just keep going.
That's a long payment. That's a long payment thing. There it is.
Like muscle phone or something, you get like.
Yeah, that's just been like a kind of really.
So you put
Let's
the
finish
government
this up so
on.
we don't go over track.
Because
Let's go ahead and get started.
You don't want to, like if they're too big of a company, we don't want to
So,
approach them until we've already got something, so.
I don't have-
There's some go-to companies.
Sue Shell, you guys are in for a treat, because I've worked with Sue before, and I think she's probably, I don't know, forgotten more about, hiring and getting the right people in the right positions than I've ever known. And, she has ridden some, with an amazing startup. I mean, what number employee were you? You were pretty early on.
I was, Rich was there before me though, we were both at Advanced Energy, and I think I was 70 something.
Right.
70 something?
What were you?
I was 11, but yeah, but there wasn't, there was only the 3 founders and 2 other people ahead of me, and 3 other people ahead of me that were there, so 6 people ahead of me, the rest were like secretaries. But I was officially 11.
Yeah. That's, you'll find out that when people are in startups, they always ask what number of employees you are. It's just this kind of like, you know, well, I was 17, no, I was 12. And so it's a,
But on the management side, she was really, really early, because a lot of those people before her were meant production temporary
Right,
stuff.
right. Right, and so she's been involved in that and a number of other business opportunities. I mean, she's just done amazing things, so I'm just glad she's here to talk with us today, and we'll get through this, and she can answer our questions.
So, in addition to the HR side, after I left Advanced Energy, I became an investment banker. So we're gonna tap into my investment banking knowledge a little bit here tonight on startups and funding sources. Actually, usually I do a class here on funding sources, but we're not doing that tonight. We're gonna talk about staffing, and I wanna caution you about staffing your entrepreneurial company, because people make a lot of mistakes. You're losing that thing on your table, you don't have to, it's falling down. I guess it doesn't matter, but it looks like it's hitting here. Anyway, so I was teaching in the College of Business for about 5 years, and then I took over the Career Management Center, where I helped to place the students in undergrad, grad, and alumni career placement. So if you need assistance, you are eligible for career placement assistance, or you might want to hire from the large population of students that exist in the College of Business. So what I want to talk about is who works in the company. And the founding positions are you. The founding positions are the people who have the original ideas, creators, patent holders, idea generators, inventors, concept people, the ones who came up with why are we doing this, why is it different from anything else, what can we patent, what's proprietary. And those people are typically the owners of the business. Owners in terms of we own the thought and the idea and the concept, and usually the intellectual property. And then there's the initial business partners for critical organizational work. And I want to talk about who do we bring on and who do we not bring on. When you are small, you typically don't have unlimited funds. Maybe no funds, or maybe very little funds. So the temptation is that somebody will approach you and say, I will do sweat equity for you. I will volunteer to work for you if you give me a percentage of your company. And it is extremely flawed. Don't do it. Don't even think about it if you can help it, if you can fund your company in other ways. So hire these positions, and only hire these positions when you're ready. You hire what is core to the business. Core means that it is the thing that is differentiating you and making you viable. So you want to own anything that has to do with intellectual property. I know a company that started up that
the lady who started it had an exceptional idea on a technological thing to do, but she didn't know how to do it. So she hired a guy that was a software engineer. This is very reminiscent of Facebook, where the Winklevoss twins wanted Facebook developed and ended up not owning it. So she hired a guy to do the software development, and she couldn't work on the software at all. She was completely dependent on him. And eventually the whole thing caved in because what was core to the business was not hers. So always keep the technology knowledge that you want to keep proprietary in the house. Then your VP, director, or head of sales, you want to know that they're representing your company well, they're telling the story well, that their integrity is high, and that they're dedicated to you, and they're not confusing that. I mean, you can hire a rep if that's what you want, who reps many, many different product lines. But if you want to have sales that actually flourish, that make you grow, you should own the salesperson. The next one is head of manufacturing, or whatever it is that you're doing, software production or manufacturing, whatever. You need to own that. You can put it offshore. There's a difference between offshoring and outsourcing. Do you know the difference? Outsourcing is you give it to another company. You actually let someone else do the work. Offshoring is you still own it, but you do it somewhere else cheaper. So you might offshore your manufacturing to another country, if that makes sense to you, but you still own the means of production. There was a company called Combi International that was an extremely high integrity Japanese company that manufactured strollers, workout equipment, and they're huge. They moved their manufacturing, they outsourced their manufacturing to China, and they eventually went out of business. If you don't own it, if you don't run it, if you don't keep the quality standards, if you don't decide on your vendors and suppliers, if you're not in control of that, you could fail. And then chief financial and accounting professionals. I'm really opinionated about this. All you have to do is look at professional athletes who hire financial consultants who keep track of their books or whatever. And pretty soon they find out that they've been robbed and that somebody has skimmed all the money and taken off, and they don't have any, they can't retire. It happens all the time in business. I think you need to have close association and control of your financial records, ownership of all that activity, and not let it out of the house. These are the things that are viewed as core to your business. Even if you're not hiring at a VP level, if you're hiring at a lower level, maybe you're hiring just a worker or a manager, if they're gonna be the person that's doing this function, then it's core and you need to have it in-house. Any questions about that?
So what you're saying is that we shouldn't hire these positions, but these positions should be part of the company.
You don't necessarily, I'm sorry, I should have made that clear. They don't have to be shareholders. They don't have to own your company at all. They just need to be in your employment as opposed to outsourced. Okay. If they're working for multiple people and they have multiple priorities and they maybe don't have the best ethical standards, maybe they, take control of your family, that's not good. Okay. Yeah, you wanna control that, and you wanna be really careful to monitor things.
So I think, I don't know, at least from what I've seen, it seems like the first two hires in a lot of cases will either be like a CTO or somebody for marketing. How do you usually draw the line on which one goes first if you're strapped for capital or resources?
So you have nothing to sell until you have your product. So that person is usually the first one, person that helps you with product refinements, who understands the competition and the market analysis. And then you need somebody to sell it. There's a lot of pre-selling that goes on in entrepreneurial companies to see if the market will buy what you have to sell and what tweaking you need to do to price, features, size, shape, whatever. So you need actually marketing and engineering to work together a lot of the time, because you identify the market and you design. Does design engineers have a tendency to design what's sexy and what they like and what they think would be fun to design, but it isn't necessarily marketable. And so you need to understand what the market's already seeing, what the market wants, what the market's missing, and what they'll be willing to pay for it. So you should be doing that before you ever launch business. You should find out, is this something that is a viable product or service? And in what configuration? Does anybody have any doubts about whether the product has a market? Are you still doing market research? Do you have a market?
Getting closer.
Getting closer, trying to see who are the real customers of the product.
Exactly. So sometimes you think you know, at least it's what you wanted. It's what you would want if you were the consumer. But then you find out that the general consumer was thinking much more automated solution, or a much more efficient solution, or a much smaller solution, or something that keeps a step ahead of the technology revolution that we're in. Shooting ahead of the duck, so to speak, to not be a Me Too player. So you're always right.
But like for example, I face some issues in the marketing, and I want someone from marketing side to be on my team and work for me. But at the same time, I don't offer the equity or share of my company. So how do I come to the agreement with someone who can still work for me without paying him, and how would that scenario?
You need to raise money before you can hire people, otherwise you have to give away your company.
Yeah.
If you try to sell a company and the company has a lot of people that are supposed shareholders and they've done sweat equity, by the way, if somebody's doing sweat equity, that's taxable. They're not getting any money from you, but they pay tax on the equity you're giving them. They don't always know this, so. Anyway, what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought. If you don't have money to pay people, then you're giving away part of your company. And when you go to sell your company, all the shareholders have to vote in favor of selling. I had a guy who owned I'll call it a fireplace company. And he got a new significant other, and they were doing great, and he decided to give her 20% of the company. And then her son joined the company, and he decided to give him 20% of the company. At the end of the day, they only had 40% and he had 60%, but he wanted to sell and they didn't, and it forced a liquidation of the company. You have to be really careful on who has ownership, because they have to participate in the decisions of the company. Shareholders vote on things. They decide whether you go away. So, and boards of directors decide whether you go away. I've seen people that lost their companies to sabotage from internal people or from boards of directors. Pick your advisory board very carefully, pick your board of directors carefully, pick your employees carefully, and your advisors really carefully.
Go ahead, question. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of in this position where I am thinking a lot about that too, like if I should be giving away part of my company, and part of it is sort of related to the last presentation, just feeling like, okay, my team has these attributes, but we could really use someone who we do natural cosmetics, so there's this person I met who knows so much about the natural products industry. He's from Senegal. There's somebody else who's in Colorado who also is like mover and shaker and also wants to get involved, and I just feel like what can I offer them that they would want to be involved, except for ownership in the company.
If there's something that they could own on their own and you can separate it out, that's one thing. Like, you can own distribution or whatever. You can have that franchise of mine. I'm going to need somebody to run whatever. You could offer them that they could have the rights to something. But anytime you give away equity, you can't get it back, not without buying it back.
Okay.
And when you buy it back, you're going to buy it at whatever the current market value is believed to be, or book value, whatever you're going to go by. So if the company grows considerably, and when you gave the equity it was worth $1 million, and when you want to buy it back, the company's book value is $5 million, you're going to pay that person a lot of money to buy it back, if they even agree to sell it back. They might want to sell it to some other person. That's another whole story. But I think you should be cautious, But if it's somebody that is core to your business and you want to include them as a partner, then you write up partnership agreements, you change from giving stock to having some sort of partnership with rules and regulations, you write up, we'll get into that in a minute, but you'll write up some partnership documents.
Okay.
Or you can single out some part of the business that they could do.
In the previous slide, you mentioned CFOs. There's a kind of a trend in the startup world to do fractional CFOing. Do you have any opinion on that?
You know, I think, so, for bigger companies, more established companies, maybe okay, I don't know.
No, for startups, I mean, just to get their paperwork together and ready for a raise and so forth.
So without equity though, right?
Yeah, no equity, just.
Well, I'd rather do it there than at the engineering level. I'd much rather have a fractional CFO than a fractional CTO. But I'm really big on checking and rechecking references and credentials and track records and doing background checks on everybody that I work with, because even though I want to be a trusting soul, I've seen way too much corruption and theft and people losing their shirts and their businesses, so it's really hard.
Then the other question, to her point, there's a lot of people who are interested in doing advisory roles, and they like to do that for usually some small percentage. It's usually in the fractions, like 1/4% or so. What's the thought on that?
Depends on what they believe that value is gonna be. So if they think that they're giving you $200,000 worth of value, they're gonna want the percentage that they get to have some representation of that, some resemblance to that. I just think the minute you give away more than a few percent, certainly you never give away majority, ever. Even if you snuggle up to majority, you don't wanna get too close. I think 30% would be really aggressive on giving away a company. So, you know, if you can find other ways to entice them, that would be good, but fundraising and capital raising is why you do it, so that you can pay people for their services at the going rate for services, instead of the exaggerated amounts that they'll get in equity in the company. You should pay for what you get, and usually the most that you need is upfront. Like you need to design your markets and your products and your pricing, and you need strategic ideas, and then once you're started and they still have 10% of the company and really don't need, you're not getting value in relationship to the amount you gave out. It's pretty scary. I think I'm most paranoid because I was in the business of selling businesses and helping people acquire businesses. And when you're doing that, one company we had 84 shareholders. 84 shareholders can't agree on anything, nothing. So it was a disaster, and we couldn't help. There's a point where you can't help, and what they do is liquidate or dissolve, or splinter it up. People take things, or sell and, you know, buy other people out. It's really crazy. So, all right, back to this slide. I think you can contract some of these positions because you don't need them full time. You can't pay these big prices. So legal. You need too many kinds of legal support to have a lawyer for everything. You might need real estate, intellectual property, employment agreements, partnership agreements, real estate. You need all kinds of attorneys, and they are specialized. So legal, outsource. HR at the beginning, you can easily outsource benefits. You can't outsource culture and the creation of culture and the engineering of how the company is going to feel. You're going to have to do that with your leadership skills, your team building skills, and who you hire. Who you hire is really critical to how the culture will evolve. But HR, practical stuff in HR, payroll for sure, benefits, and personnel law stuff, you can outsource. Now, eventually you'll want to bring it in, because I think Rich would attest to the fact that HR becomes really instrumental in mergers and acquisitions and acquisition and harmonizations, and in cultural creation and training programs and that kind of stuff. But at the beginning, you can use companies outside for advice as well. Not a critical IT, so that could also be payroll, or it could be anything but the core product that you're developing. So if you need IT support for your web pages and your SEO and all that stuff.
Sue,
Yes.
can I just maybe clarify, just so they maybe understand a little bit? If you hire a subcontractor to do some things, there could be some confusion about who owns it.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that you're alluding to. If they're an employee and they do work for you, the company owns it.
Absolutely.
And so that's the why she's saying you can outsource some of these things because they're not as critical, but if you're designing software, I had a friend that started a company, Jeff Lewis.
Yeah.
Started a company, outsourced software development, got into a dispute with the company, they denied them access, and they had to rebuild everything from scratch. Because the developer, the outsourced developer, owned it.
Most companies will have employees sign a non-compete, confidentiality, other kinds of agreements. And basically what they say is, if you're on our nickel, if we're paying your salary, and you develop something, we own it. Unless it's specifically excluded, so if you're developing software and on the side you invent a vacuum cleaner, they don't own the vacuum cleaner because you have specifically excluded in your agreements. But if it's related to the business, you really can't exclude it. It would be included in what's protected, and you're being paid for them to own your creation, so. Completely agree.
What if you're dealing with something where they don't think that you'll actually enforce those agreements?
So there's a myth that they're unenforceable. They are not unenforceable. The only thing you can't do is prevent someone from working in their field that they're trained to work in. But you can protect your intellect. Common law protects that your intellectual property and your customer lists are protected whether you write another agreement or not. Those belong to the company, and you can enforce it that way. But they are enforceable in advanced energy. We enforced our non-compete many times when people stole technological ideas and went off and tried to market them, and we nailed them. So depends on how well it's written. Without being too aggressive, you can have agreements that work. Rich?
Also, on the copyright law, what Sue's saying is, if a software developer develops something, a software developer by law, or an artist by law, owns the copyright. Whether it's assigned to him or not, it's assumed that it is his. He has to actually assign it to your company in order for it to be transferred. So when you write a contract to somebody like that, what you need to have is a work for hire contract. Then when you have a work for hire contract, you've hired them to create that work for you, and the copyright goes with it.
Yeah, be sure you get a good attorney, advisor, or person on your board, or someone that you can speak to for an hour at a time. When these kinds of questions come up, you want to make sure that the language in the documents, whether it's your new partnership agreement or whatever you're doing, is written bulletproof, so that you own what you own, and they don't, and that you protect what you own, and they can, and that if there's any question about an employee theft or fraud, you have an agreement that works. Okay, so marketing, I think the head of marketing and the strategic marketing direction and the head of sales needs to be an employee, but you can have plenty of marketing firms that are out marketing your product or service through whatever channels. They can be through web channels, or they can be through distributors or arrangements that you make with other people. Facility management is easy. Most companies I know no longer manage their facilities because it is not core and it's a pain in the neck and other people do it much better. Right? And janitorial the same, who would ever do that? It used to be that you owned all the employees in your company and everybody contributed and that was great, but it makes no sense if other people can do it better, that you would keep it in the house. And bookkeeping, just general bookkeeping, ledger entries, that can be outside. But when it comes to creating financial statements, and also, if you are intending to sell your business at some point, audited financial statements are really, really good. At the minimal, reviewed financial statements, but unreviewed or unaudited will not hold up in the sale of a company. Because no one else has looked at the line for you to, no one has checked your paperwork or your sales records and things like that. When you go to sell a company, the formula for determining the price can be different depending on what kind of a company. Software companies are typically a multiple of sales. Other companies, a multiple of earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, or about 1,000 different formulas, but study kind of what will determine the value of your company. The adjusted cash flow models, have any of you studied the financial modeling and the valuation models? Okay, so for your industry, there will be a typical way that they calculate the value of your company. The value of your company is not the book value of your company. It's not how many things you bought and how much they're worth at this moment in time, like this desk, I bought it for $400 and now it's worth $200. The book value of stuff really doesn't matter. In the sale, if you have a bunch of assets that you've acquired, but the assets are non-income producing, in other words, well, I had a guy who had a screen printing operation, and he had a whole warehouse of antique printing equipment. I mean, it was really cool, but it was not income producing. He wanted $1 million for his collection. No buyer on the planet wanted to pay him $1 million for that asset, even though it was on the books. It is not income producing, so they're going to pay you for income producing assets and for the results of that. So whatever income you produce and then the profitability after that. Oh. Awesome.
Or does she just need to touch that mark?
Something went away. Okay, questions so far? What's contracts? Contractors have to be bona fide contractors. If the government thinks that they are your employee because you are the only employer they have, and because you determine where they work, what they work on, what the tools that they work with, if they don't have other customers, if they don't have a separate tax license, they could be considered employees and you have to go pay back taxes on. You want bona fide contractors who have status, filing their own tax returns, business cards, a separate phone number, a listing in the phone directory,